Excellent stuff. So, hey folks, and welcome back to the Inside the Mix podcast. And we have another live episode today. But before we start today's episode, I want to let you know about a Synthwave radio show every week on Wednesdays. So that's 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I believe it is. 8:30 p.m. GMT, and it's called the Radio Dark Tunnel Synthwave Show with Cool Moe. It's an hour 20 show which features synthwave, synthpop, darkwave, chiptune, drum and bass, and many forms of electronic music, and prefers a mix of instrumental and vocal synthwave. So I thought I'd just drop that in there before we start today's episode. So welcome back, and in this episode I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Brian Moriarty, aka Lockdown FM. Now Brian is a new Irish producer based in London with a passion for new electronica, and he's going to share with us his musical background and the birth of Lockdown FM. So Brian, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, not bad at all. A nice kind of sunny Sunday evening here in East London. Yeah, so it's just great. It's great to be here. Great to be doing this, you know. So as probably the first interview I've ever done under this project, the Lockdown FM project. So yeah, really excited to just finally talk about it, you know.
Ace, man. Yeah, it's great. Thanks for dropping by. And it is nice weather, isn't it? It's nice down. I'm in the southwest, and it's definitely picking up in terms of weather. I had a barbecue yesterday, which was absolutely lovely. So I'm a bit tired after a few beers last night, but we'll power through. So I've got your bio here. I'm just going to read it out for the audience. So I mentioned it just now. You're a new Irish producer based in London. Lockdown FM is a brand new synthwave or electronica project that celebrates the basics of fundamentals of synthwave and applies a collective series of other influences from a vast range of other genres. With a name inspired by the world's climate during the COVID-19 pandemic, I thought it might be with Lockdown FM. You released your debut single, The Big Think, on June the 12th. I'm assuming that was last year, June the 12th?
I think it was the year before. It was 20. That was. 20,
oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, that was literally just in the first pandemic. So that was actually. I think it was the year before. So, from what I remember, anyway.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So, mastered by Italian artist producer Vincenzo Salvia. It's the first installment to the Lockdown FM repertoire, but you've recently released another single, haven't you, called Glow? And I believe that was released, we're going to touch on this a bit later on in the podcast episode, but that was released earlier this week? Yeah, it would be this week, wasn't it? Is it earlier this week? Yeah,
it was last Monday, so Monday, that was the 4th of April. Literally finally got it out. Literally long awaited, I think, but it was kind of like back and forth in regards to getting production right and getting vocals right, and obviously with the vocalist of the track, James Berkeley, being in Dublin, it was just like a over and back for the Irish Sea, just literally trying to get things laid down and trying to come up with something that we're really, really happy with. So yeah, it's delighted to finally have it out there, you know.
No, it sounds ace, mate. What we'll do is, a bit further into the episode, we'll go into like the intricacies of how you put the track together and all that sort of stuff. But no, it's a great feeling, isn't it, when you finally release that music and that song. And what I'll do is I'll put I'll put a link rather to that song in the episode show notes, so the audience can go away and listen to that once they've finished listening to this episode, might I add. And what I'm going to do now is, because this is a live podcast episode, I'm going to quickly flick over to Facebook and see if there's anything going on there. And we've got 2 viewers, which is, once again, I said this last time, it is quality over quantity. So thank you for those who are watching. Hopefully we'll get a few more on board. So what I want to start with, Brian, is just like your musical background. So can you tell our audience a bit about you as a musician and where it all began and how it all started?
Well, for me, music started nice young age. I think it was about 11. I picked up the guitar. So from there on, got massively into rock music, all the different genre, like subgenres of rock. And then music started as I went into my teenage years. Like rock music really grew on me because I was playing in bands in school. And when I was in school, there was obviously we used to do the Battle of the Bands every year. So that was like, I was like every year on that same day, I was just a different kid, you know, because that was like, it was, you know, our Woodstock. You know what I mean? It was always the big the big event every single year. So that got a lot of myself and my peers back in school playing like together. From there on, I think I've been playing in bands since I was about 15, 16, and gigging as well. So obviously I grew up in Dublin, and so there's a nice vibrant music scene in Dublin, and I basically went on to my passion for music grew from playing in rock bands and playing guitar and trying to sing, mostly just shouting in key. I went on after school. When I finished school at age 18, I got a degree. I went on to university to study music as part of a BA. So from there, that's where music really kind of kicked off for me, to the point of, like, I think that from my early, like, late teens, my early 20s, like, music would seem like the only thing I was doing. And literally every gig I was offered, I was taking it, be it session gigs, session work, playing with different acts, playing in different bands, obviously still heavily rock orientated, so obviously very obviously live gigs and so forth, and just really just pump it out, trying to obviously pump out as much music as I could and play as much gigs as I could, and just a lot, like, back, it seemed like music was the be all end all at the end. The only thing that seemed to really matter for quite a few years. So and then things obviously, that's obviously where it all began, and obviously Lockdown FM, as we mentioned earlier on, kind of came when we couldn't play live gigs, and I think a lot of musicians turned to this way of trying to be as self-sufficient as possible in their own space, and that's what I did. I obviously invested in some gear that I never would have bought, like when I was playing in bands and so forth, and literally started producing electronic music, which is something that I've been trying to look into for a long period of time. And I've always had a real passion for electronic music, but it really just started from that point, where obviously I started making synthwave as well. So that's kind of how this kind of project grew, out of that. So it's definitely, I think, like many musicians, or like many people in the synthwave kind of scene, when I started out from a rock background, maybe different types of background, and kind of came into synthwave. But I like the way I was able to take a lot of what I kind of learned and what I've kind of taken from playing in rock music and brought that into the kind of music I'm making now today.
Yeah, it's a great answer, mate. And I think it's, I probably say this on every episode I do now, but it is a case of there are so many artists that come from the rock and metal background and transition and go in and move into synthwave, synth music, whatever form of synth it might be. And there are correlations there between the two different types of music, and why it's so alluring and it draws people in. But it's interesting. What I wanted to touch on there was, you mentioned you got a BA in, is it in songwriting, or is it music production, or is it both?
It was a Bachelor of Arts. So basically, from what I remember, I took you take a strand, so you would choose music with another strand as well. So I took geography, which is so basically I have my degree is in both music and geography. So from what I remember now, in regards to the BA, it was a 3-year BA, but like there would have been a lot of emphasis on many different aspects of music. I remember even studying a module on how to actually write about music, so like essentially music journalism. So a little bit of, it was a mix of everything: theory, knowledge, musicology as well. The philosophy of music, like literally all these different strands, different ways of looking at music. So it's certainly, like, what I take from it is that it's basically taught me to kind of approach music in a different way, especially how we listen to music, but also how we speak about and talk about music, and really kind of answer a lot of questions that I had in the run up to it, like in terms of how people react to music in different ways, and like I'm certainly like I'm going back to I certainly find myself at the moment like looking back to those days and kind of thinking about the information that I took on board, in regards to everyone's different kind of approach to music and how they perceive music in different ways, certainly because I think especially after trying to make my mark or trying to get my foot in the door with some of the larger musical institutions, like rejection's obviously part of being a musician and like trying to get your music out there. So it's sometimes you do need to kind of remind yourself that like music is quite selective amongst like different people perceive music in different ways, and that's obviously cool. But like that, I think that was one of the biggest things that I took from my kind of musical education as such,
Yeah. It's interesting, I find, with musical education. I'm a massive fan of academia and studying and whatnot, and I love to do it. I consider myself a lifelong learner. And I went and got a master's degree in music engineering and production, so I went and did all that business. But I often ask people, sort of, with regards to music and the music industry and being a musician and cracking the industry, because as you said then, the music industry is fundamentally built on knockbacks. You have to have broad shoulders and be well adept to criticism and being knocked back. But what do you think this is a quite probably contentious question, but do you think it's important for musicians to have an academic background in some sort of music discipline to be successful? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. Well, I think it's like it's understanding that if depending on what music you play or what instrument you play and what music you want to try and create, if something sounds wrong or if something's like out of tune, if you make a track and there's one of the instruments, one of the tracks is like out of tune, obviously it's a no-brainer. You have to recognize that, and if things aren't like like they don't, there's a real reason as to why things don't sound good together, I think, in terms of music. But I think there are many successful artists and bands and musicians out there like who have never received any formal musical education, like even the ability to read like notation is something that it always surprised me how many even some of the best musicians I've ever played with or ever got to know, they can't read notation, or it's just never stood to them because they've never needed it. And I think I think the music, especially rock, if you take for example rock music, has seen so many acts come through, so many successes. If you think about some of the biggest bands that have gained commercial success, maybe have done so and have really not had to have incredible musicianship, or it was because they lacked that education, that knowledge around music, or it didn't apply to them. And if you think that's what made them who they were, because they provided something that was different, and it was like, again, somewhat like that, somewhat anti-establishment, going against the whole realms of the formalities of music, or you'd have to be educated or so forth, because that's the way it was for so long in regards to music. If you go date back to the classical, the Baroque eras, there's like obviously no question, no one could just pick up an instrument and just play it and it'll sound good. There has to be, there always had to be that kind of formal training and so forth. So, I look, to answer your question, Mark, I think do musicians?
It's a tough one.
Do musicians, do they need it? No, I don't think they do. I think people can create music in many different ways, and as a result of that, at the end of the day, it's again, it goes back to what I said earlier on about how we all approach music in different ways. So no, I think people really can get away with like not having musical education, and it's really down to what they create. And they create something that people do find interesting, or it does kind of appeal to people, then so be it, you know. So it's that's what I'd say. Now, if you're 150, 200 years ago, it'd be a different. Obviously, it'd be a different story, but like different times and so forth. But that's just the world we live in now, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. I think particularly now, with the accessibility of things like YouTube and being able to, if you want to learn something, you could quickly just hop on, and there's guaranteed to be a video out there. Albeit there's a lot of videos where you've got to sift through the noise to find the one you want, which can be tricky. But I like what you said previously about the fact that not having that formal education and background can breed creativity and take you in directions that you wouldn't necessarily go in, because you're not stifled or you're not restricted by what you've been told is correct. For example, with distorted guitar, cranking the gain on a guitar to the point where it distorts. I don't know. I can't say for certain whether it was an accident. I imagine it was an accident, but then someone says, actually, you know what? We've gone past what was supposed to be the max, and now we've created something new. So I think there's arguments, isn't there, for both sides. I know, for example, myself, when I was playing guitar and I was self-taught, I bought Total Guitar. I bought that monthly, and that basically taught me how to play guitar. And it turns out I went into a studio, tried to record, and realised my technique was shit. And I then had to have lessons to improve my technique. So I think there's a time and a place for you to go and get that extra schooling. But I'm not gonna lie, I thoroughly enjoyed my time on my master's degree and learning about music. And it was quite similar to what you did as well, where you learn about how you can study music as well. You also learn that element too, which I think helps further in instances like this, where you're running a music podcast. You can start to actually, those tools and techniques I learned from that. So I suppose it's applicable. Everything's applicable further down the line. But one question I've got for you now, Brian, is there a particular song or artist that really inspired you to be a musician, to be a creative?
God, I'm kind of thinking. Do you mean in terms of what started for me at an early age? That kind of artist? God, there's quite a few. I think I'd like to say Jimi Hendrix, and the reason is that when I first picked up the guitar, started playing Jimi Hendrix songs, and just the way I was taught Jimi Hendrix songs, just the way this guy just knew his way around a guitar, I was able to create some of these amazing kind of melodic lines and riffs, and also his just persona on stage and the way he played and so forth. I think I'd say either Jimi Hendrix is a kind of like the guitar hero, but not just guitar playing. Like, I think his music, songwriting, and he's the way he was like one of the first kind of artists out there that just dressed in a certain way that he didn't care as such. 1960s, late 60s into the 70s, very progressive time. And I think I remember learning about a lot of what was going on in the world around that time, obviously across in the States and the UK, and how young culture was changing as well. But like also Jimi Hendrix, the way he was at one of the people at the kind of the forefront of that, as well. I think it really kind of connected with me. So I choose Jimi Hendrix out of all that. So definitely Jimi Hendrix started for me.
Fantastic. Did you ever master any of his Jimi Hendrix songs on guitar?
I'd say, I think Purple Haze was one of the first songs that I learned to play the whole way through. Guitar solo as well, even that part come to the end where it's just the one note, and I think he plays it sometimes plays it with his teeth or so forth, but like it's just that one note, really high pitched. Like like that was probably the one, and I definitely certainly tried a few others, and just it's challenging. You know, it's certainly really, really good for any kind of the younger kind of guitar players out there. If they're looking to kind of push their guitar playing, to definitely check out some Jimi Hendrix tracks. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember going back to what I said earlier about buying Total Guitar, and I think it was All Along the Watchtower and Purple Haze. I never mastered either of them. I was always the guitarist who would start to learn a song, learn the riff I wanted, then move on to the next one, much to my detriment, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to quickly do now, Brian, I'm just going to quickly nip over to Facebook, and here we go. Henrietta, thanks for dropping by and viewing the podcast. Henrietta, send in her appreciation from Sweden.
Oh, nice.
Transit. Going around the world here. This is amazing stuff. Excellent. So my next sort of topic or line of questioning is the birth of Lockdown FM. So previously I mentioned in the bio, and you all mentioned it as well, that it was it came to the forefront really during the pandemic, hence the name Lockdown FM. And you're sort of going down the synthwave electronica route. Can you tell us a bit more about how that all started and when?
Yeah, I'll certainly try and I'll get more in depth with it now this time. I think I probably didn't answer the question earlier on, but no, definitely there's a lot more to it than what I mentioned earlier on. But like, so look, essentially, like the name obviously Lockdown FM comes from a time where we were actually in lockdown, and I was back in Dublin during that period, and literally I kind of sat down. I was kind of thinking to myself, what am I going to do, like in terms of music now? You know, no gigs. You know, it seemed as though massive investments had to be made in order to create content because I was in a band. I was still in a band. I'm in a band called Saints Boulevard, and we were like thinking to ourselves, how are we going to create content now during this period without massive investments? So I kind of thought to myself, well, you know, why don't I start creating my own content? And it could have even started the first week of lockdown. I remember just picking up guitar and just putting out a little bit of content of me just playing some of the best guitar. Well, some of the best guitar I could try and play now to myself, or I myself could play. People could hear, could enjoy, and that was like, wow, really enjoyed doing that. And then, you know, I thought to myself, okay, let's make an investment here. So I invested in a bit more equipment, you know, the MIDI keyboards, the so forth, and I kind of thought to myself, you know, there's no reason why I can't continue or make great music during this period. So I had been listening to a lot of synthwave. I got really into synthwave a few years prior to that. Really fascinated with, you know, the whole synthwave scene, the music that was coming out of it. You know what I mean? All the different forms of this whole wave thing, you know, synthwave and so forth. And so essentially started playing around with some synth samples, and before I knew it, I was making some stuff that I was like really happy. And I thought to myself, this is up to I believe it was up to a standard that I could literally release. And so basically, just started basically continue working. The Big Think was like my first big. It's an instrumental track. That was the first track I released under Lockdown FM, and that obviously how that started out was literally I started out with playing with a few things in GarageBand on my iPhone, and then it just grew from there and on and on and on, and then started adding layers, and you know, started producing it with investing a little bit more gear, and before I knew it, I literally had a project that was solely me, and this was literally just over the first few weeks of lockdown, where it seemed like the world had literally, our life had been put on the pause switch, you know what I mean? And now I obviously I don't. For me personally, that was it's certainly a time where you could focus a little bit more on creativity, because it seemed as though that a lot of other things in life were kind of pushed to the side and so forth. And I've no doubt it was a very, very difficult and hard time for people, and as such as well. You know, so I can't go out and say it was a good time for me or anything like that, but it was certainly a time where it was like, you know, time for, well, I'd say for a lot of people, because that's what a lot of people chose to do. They just chose to be creative in different ways during that period, because again, pubs, nightclubs, restaurants, nightlife, sport and events, even sport itself, or it was all just literally gone. It was literally, that was all put on hold. You know what I mean? And people had to find other ways to, you know, either like in some ways express themselves, but also keep themselves occupied. So I chose creativity, and that's that creativity was through Lockdown FM. So hell of a journey, because you know, it's I find it, the music I'm making, to be, even the whole scene and the music is so inspired by a lot of like movies and film and TV that, you know, I've actually that's really just grabbed me over the past, well, since I was a kid. You know what I mean? So it's mentally it's done me, and I've no doubt it does a lot of other people these massive favours. It gives them such a lovely outlet to express themselves, but also really just ingrain themselves in the music and in the music that people are creating and so forth. So that's how Lockdown FM kind of came about, and yeah, it's, you know, it's been a really, really exciting journey since then, you know.
Yeah, I think going back to what you said earlier when you were mentioning about in lockdown and how you used the time to be creative, and I think music and creativity as a form of, it was almost like a form of therapy. There is a profession which is music therapy, and it's there, and it helps you through those times, those difficult times and those difficult periods. And I think maybe what you were alluding to back then was you're kind of making the best of a bad situation. There's a lot of negativity. There is, obviously, it is a really, really bad situation. There's no getting away from it. But you got to try and be as positive as you can. And if your creativity can be your outlet, I mean, there's a lot of artists that I've interviewed on this podcast who have done the exact same thing as yourself. And I did it to an extent too when I started releasing music again. I was just, once again, in that position whereby there was not a great deal else for me to do. So I'll start releasing again. But it's interesting you mentioned there about how when you join the scene and there's a lot of artists releasing music, and there are new artists all the time who are releasing synth-based music, and it is amazing the amount of music that gets released and the amount of artists that just spring up from nowhere per se is amazing. How have you found like the sort of online community involved in synthwave? How have you sort of found yourself welcomed into that community, and what is your experience and what's your feedback on it?
Well, really positive. For me, it's been really positive. You know, I push my Instagram. Instagram would be the social media platform that I tend to repush. Obviously I use quite a few of the others, but I've found I've made kind of communication with people. I've made links with people all over the world, which which off the bat feels really cool. You know what I mean? If I look at the source of my Spotify streams, also from all over the world. If some, like, I can DMs I can receive from people, other synthwave producers, people who produce similar or similar sounding music, even people who are heavily into creating Spotify playlists. The scene's been it's been really, really supportive, and I think it really shows me that a lot of people really are in it for the love of the music as well, you know. And it's I think it's really cool. It's really cool that the way that's gone about, you know, and it's booming. It really is booming. And I get completely blown away every time I kind of look to see who has been listening to my music, or who has been you know, following me or sending me DMs or comments on Instagram. Yeah, it's really cool to be doing part of that. And you know, it's a lot of the links that contacts that I've made have been online, not out on the scene and meeting people. So, but I do make an effort to. I obviously go see Synthwave acts out in the scene, especially if living in London and so forth. So I obviously went to see. I saw Wolf Club play in Camden just before Christmas, and
love Wolf Club.
Yeah, so there's Wolf Club, and I think Roxy Drive she opened the show, and that was the first time I actually found myself, you know, physically amongst people who were also synthwavers or so forth, and it was that was also like really cool, because just to see it firsthand, you know, it's I thought it was really cool. So yeah, like overall it's been a really positive start, you know what I mean, and like there hasn't been any real negativity that I've experienced, you know, and it's really opened up some nice opportunities for me. And like I love I mean, I never like set goals for myself in terms of how many people I want to reach with the music. I think the music will speak for itself, but it's been really fun and really and exciting, you know. I obviously don't want it to stop anytime soon, but like it's been really positive and fun for me. So
brilliant. It's amazing. It is a very supportive online community, I find, with synth artists. There's loads of them, and the sharing and the comments and the feedback on work. Like if you've got a song you're working on, you can send it out to various artists, and they'll give you like really candid, useful feedback. And also when you have a release as well, and they get behind it and push it for you, it's amazing. And coming from the metal scene, which is another amazing music scene, it's something that's incredible. It's very different to what I've experienced, and different in a positive way. And I think it's brilliant. It really is. And it's like you say, you can get to chat to people from all over the world, which is amazing. Just in hearing their experiences, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's the great thing about I think the modern day music scenes as they are. You know what I mean? The scene kind of extends far beyond, like usually it'd just be city by city, you know, and obviously if you were local, whether you're a local artist or an international, like an internationally commercially successful artist, you know, it's. But usually it would be scene by scene by scene, you know. Like if you think about Seattle, you think about, you know, what went on in the Sunset Strip in LA, or like it's now all changed, you know what I mean? And it seems like there's been this creation of an online community, in the synthwave online community, and I think it's really cool to network with different people, like people who've got similar interests and are into making similar music to you. It's really cool to, you know, network in that way, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's kind of a nice segue really from what you just mentioned just now about not having a particular goal for your music in terms of streams, etc. But you mentioned then that the initial goal was you needed to create content, and that's why sort of Lockdown FM materialized and happened.
Yeah.
Has that goal now changed over time? Is it a case of now that it's your sort of musical priority, or what? Do you have a goal or an aim, for one of a better way of putting it, for Lockdown FM, or is it kind of, I'm going to write some music, release it, and sort of like what will be will be?
Yeah, I've got like there's material that I kind of that's unreleased. I've a lot of unreleased material that I obviously want people to hear, and literally. In terms of numbers, definitely. Like I said earlier on, I don't really want to set myself a goal in terms of numbers about who I want to hit. because obviously that just leads to like social media addiction, like in terms of picking up phones and so forth, and like in terms of me getting square eyes, I'm not far off it, but like in terms of where I want to go with Lockdown FM now, just really keep creating music that I think I'm happy with, and obviously with the new single Glow that I released this week is a track that I'm like incredibly proud of, and a lot I felt that that was certainly a track that was actually made during a lockdown, which meant I was solely focused on it. Now if I was to make a track again, I want to be making a track under them circumstances and so forth. So but yeah, like more music, continuously making music. I think I'm certainly under the I'm certainly driven to release singles consistently over the next few months. Like a question mark over an EP, but I've no plans for an album. I want to keep pushing out singles in that sense. I think that's where that's what I'd like to be doing. And keep every song unique in its own given way. And yeah, so like basically means there's literally no I don't release album fillers. So another single would be in the next few months is probably what I'm looking at now, and I've just done a lyric video for Glow, which was a little bit delayed getting uploaded due to tech difficulties, but that's where I see the whole project now. So I mean, I know that understandably I could set big goals for myself, where it would give me such a sense of fulfillment if I was to achieve those, but it's also not achieving them as well that I think would draw a lot of setbacks and kind of develop maybe an unhealthy relationship with music. So just literally, as I said, music, consistently making music and so forth. So but also enjoying it.
Yeah, I like what you said there. Well, yeah. I like what you said there about an unhealthy relationship with music. I say I like it in a weird kind of way, in that when you set yourself these goals and these metrics and almost like KPIs, your key performance indicators, and when you start abiding and living by those, then it kind of sucks the fun out of the creativity and the music. I find I've been in that situation with bands in the past, whereby it turns into a numbers game, and you need to approach this many promoters, you need to get the album heard by this many people, and then you're kind of like, oh man, it's turning into like a part-time job, and it kind of takes the fun out of it. Whereas I think if you're just doing it, like, I'm going to create some music and just continue being creative, and I think that for me is a much better approach. Obviously, I think when you get further up the food chain and you've got artists and management and A&R and you've got all these other responsibilities, then there's a bit more pressure. But I think when you're at a stage now like we are, where you're doing it, creating music, releasing it, it's a fun place to be. Yeah. Once again, a very nice segue here. We're going to move on to talk about Glow now. Now, I had the pleasure of mastering Glow, which is a fantastic track, might I add. What I want to do now is just like dive into a bit more there. So previously you mentioned about how it was written during lockdown, but can you sort of tell our audience about how you approach songwriting? So how does a song start? What is like the nucleus of a song for you? How does it all begin?
In terms of the musicality, it could be a hook. So literally, it could be a sample, it could be a riff, it could be a melodic line that I think just sounds nice. I think sounds nice. That's usually the foundation of it, and then I work from there. So, like originally, I'd write a riff, and then that's how the song begins. You literally just the foundation, and then you just brick by brick, you build your house. So, in terms of Glow, how I approached that track is very different, because Glow is a very political song. That's where that's the kind of theme behind Glow, and it's not promoting a certain idea, but it's certainly like it's trying to shine a light on everything that's gone on in the world today, and is what actually has been, you know, and so forth. So that's it's down to a theme as well. If I have a theme about what I want to portray in a song, that's another place inspiration kind of comes from in terms of writing songs and so forth. So it's like it's like a house. You have your foundation, bricks go on top, you know, and then you're getting all the detail of the rooms, painting rooms, adding in furniture, decorations. Yeah, that's for me. That's how it works. So I make a lot of work that I don't use, or I make a lot of I have a lot of material that I do scrap, and I do find myself scrapping. It doesn't feel good to do that, but yeah, I do. It's kind of one of those processes of stuff that, you know, I just feel doesn't fit the bill or it's not good enough. But yeah, it's just all trial and error, you know, in terms of creating music and so forth.
Yeah, I'm very much the same. I have a whole folder, so sort of echoing what you said there about how you create songs and you sort of throw them away. And I have a folder full of just ideas, and some of them might just be one like piano refrain that I started and then never come back to. Do you, when you say you throw them away, do you keep them, or do you actually delete them from your computer? Because what I like to do is, I don't know if you do the same, is I like to look back at ideas that from like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's nice because I look back at it and I think, actually, I can see the journey and how I've progressed as a producer, as an artist. I don't know if you do that a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, I would. I tend to hold on to like certain things, certain smaller projects that I kind of record or kind of put together. Yeah, I tend to keep them. Obviously, the technological side of it. It's, in terms of the actual computers themselves, obviously memory and space is another kind of incentive as to why work would have to get the chop. But I would, like yourself. Yeah, I would. I tend to hold on to older material just looking back and kind of seeing, was it good or was it not, or, you know, like I even found on a platform called Reverb Nation, my band when I was 16.
Oh yes, Reverb Nation. And
I don't know whether if anyone's listening to this probably can remember that or so forth. But Reverb Nation was a platform. It was cool. It was cool. But then, you know, you realise you've been asked to do music festivals across in Texas and Austin, Texas, that don't even exist. It's like, oh crap, yeah, get the passports ready, lads. You know, we're supposed to be playing the music festival then next week. That's what we found with Reverb Nation. But I came across my own band, my old band. So I was thinking it was about 15 or 16 at the time, and I listened back to the track itself, and, you know, if you think about everything that could probably go wrong with a recording, you know, that was it. Like, obviously it's good to, you know, just look at things from a certain perspective and kind of say, well, it's all a learning process. But, you know, I'm talking about out of tune guitars, flat vocals, the drummers out of time, not playing to a click. But like, it's literally like what we did back then, and you know, it was fun, absolutely fun and exciting times. But like, yeah, it's you look back then and you kind of realise how much you've come, and how where you've been and what you've done, and now where you are right now. Because like, it's like learning to drive. You never make the same mistake twice, you know, or trying to pass a driving test. You never make the same mistake twice in the run up to it. You know what I mean? So, like an out of tune guitar, you buy a tuner, you fix it for the next time. You know what I mean? So, but a lot of that I had to be told at the time in the aftermath, which was not pleasant as a young musician. You know, people telling you probably want to work on your you probably want to tell your drummer to play to a click track, or you probably want to re-record that song again. It's kind of like, I'm kind of thinking to myself, but that was great. What's wrong with it? You know what I mean? But like it's the hard way of doing things. Sometimes the truth does hurt in that aspect. But yeah, it is what it is. But like it's good to. I think it is good to look at all work and look at old ideas and so forth, and just see where you've come from.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's quite nice to have that nostalgia trip. So you mentioned Reverb Nation. Then I had this conversation. I think it was a podcast a few episodes ago with an ex-bandmate of mine, Chris, and we were on Reverb Nation, and it was the be-all and end-all at the time. And I was just googling it now to see if it still exists, and it does.
Yeah.
And I was looking through it, and the band I was in at the time, we've got like 23,000 followers on Reverb Nation, which I was absolutely amazed at. Once again, that's quite nice. But like what you mentioned then about going back on a nostalgia trip and sort of looking at your what you've done in the past, and like if you hadn't mentioned it, then I wouldn't have gone and had a look. But no, I think it's good to go back and listen to your previous material, and then, like I said, you can see that journey that you've gone on.
Yeah.
What I want to delve into a bit more now is the sort of the production side of things as well. So you mentioned earlier that you were using GarageBand, and that's how you came up with the original track and put that together. How has that progressed now? Have you found, since you started creating electronic music, has your sort of arsenal of instruments and technology increased, or are you still using GarageBand? I mean, how has that progressed over time?
Yeah.
What is it you're using at the moment? What is your go-to piece of technology?
Yeah, this is where I think a lot of people are going to see this as a bit sacrilegious now, because obviously, but obviously GarageBand being the stock kind of software that you get on a MacBook, it just applied to me, and I do understand there's limitations, but then as I learn more about the software and I learn about other artists and other acts that have made very good quality music through GarageBand, I stuck with it. But then I started bringing in tunes and samples from outside of the software itself, so the limitations aren't quite as, I'm not so heavily limited in terms of what I can create and so forth. So I did. The last two tracks I've literally created through GarageBand, and in terms, I haven't come to a point where I thought to myself, I need to progress now. I'm literally, I do sometimes. There's been one or two times in the past I thought to myself, if I'm sending it on to, say, get master or so forth, I want to be telling people, Logic Pro, that's what I'm using right now. I'm using Logic, and that's what I'm using. But like, no, it's I'm using everything and recorded everything through GarageBand, and it's done me great. It done me anything I needed to do. So it's wondering now, like, whether the upgrade to Logic should be done, or should I be using that money to maybe buy more sample kits and so forth. It's really that those big questions and so forth. So but like, no, I'm an advocate for GarageBand, and I do use GarageBand, and I will admit now, I've no shame in announcing it. Like, I used to have a lot of shame to kind of think that, isn't that the kind of the basic kind of model, shouldn't you be upgrading and so forth? But I'm obviously happy, and I've kind of made a lot of music through GarageBand, and whether I continue to do so or whether I upgrade, it's really in the question now. But like, I'm not good with technology at all. I'm not good with it, and where a lot of what I create comes through my musicality, my creativity through that. So there has been a few times where I thought to myself, what's this supposed to be called, or where am I supposed to go with this? Now I've literally studied hard to get my head around software and music technology software and so forth. But like I'm by no means a whiz kid. Like I couldn't do this for anyone else. I'd love to, but I couldn't, because I wouldn't have that turnover of creating a track, or basically this. I wouldn't be able to provide a service, because I would probably I wouldn't be able to work as fast as probably the average kind of producer out there. But I think music is where the music is where it comes. My musicality and creativity, that's where it all kind of develops for me. So that's me, and that's my relationship with GarageBand. So that's at least that part's off my chest now. But,
no, I think it's right in what you said. I was like, if you've got a workflow, and you've got an outlet, and you've got a medium that you can use to create the music that you want, then why change if it works for you? It goes back to what we were discussing earlier, I think, about in terms of that formal education, whereby the purists will say, if you're recording, you need to use Pro Tools. If you're doing this, you need to use if you're performing, you use Ableton. It's just like, well, somebody said that. It doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You do whatever works for you, and if you're getting the results which you are getting, then stick with GarageBand. It does the job, and I think it's important, and I think it's one thing you could say to the listeners is like, if it works for you, then stick with it. I think it comes back to music as well. I like the phrase, if it sounds good, it is good. There's no point in following set rules are good in a way. There's a time and a place, but sometimes there's a time and a place to think, actually, you know what, it works, then why fix what isn't broken? And I'm a big advocate for GarageBand as well. I've worked with a number of artists who use GarageBand, and the music they've produced is fantastic. And using GarageBand, they're comfortable with it. It's like, why change? So kind of, once again, a nice, like, moving on to the next question, Brian, would be sort of like, what plans have you got in the pipeline? You mentioned then that you've got songs that you want to release. Are there like plans for collaborations? Are there plans for, I don't know, maybe releasing via a label? Have you been approached by labels? What have you got, any key dates coming up that you could share with us? So
I'm going to be, obviously this week, the lyric video for Glow has just come out, and obviously you're going to be spending a bit of time trying to plug that, get that in front of people. I want to work with James Berkeley again. He was the vocalist on Glow. I've been working with James.
Very good.
I used to be in a band with James back in Dublin, a band called Still Room, and I think I'm just always blown away by the vocals that he puts down, like that real retro kind of sound that like he can give the track. So I want to work with James again, and I think on the next single, I want obviously James back to do the vocal as well. I love to collaborations. I'd always love to work with other artists and so forth, and especially other vocalists or other musicians. Like, I want to start working like with musicians as well, like like a saxophone players and people who might have like really good technique in terms of synthesizer keyboards. It's all endless, you know what I mean, in terms of what we can do. So yeah, it's what I got like. There's nothing major planned in the pipeline. I just basically, I'm going to try keep getting Glow in front of as many people as possible, and obviously I want to, without, like, as I said earlier on, setting a particular goal for it. I just really want to see that song being heard by as many people as possible, and for it to appeal to as many people as possible, that people obviously would see something in that song that, or see what I've put into that song, see my kind of vision and so forth. So a lot of promo and a lot of stuff obviously will be taking place, and that's what's been happening over the past week. We're working hard on the promo for that single, so a little bit more promo, and maybe potentially a music video for Glow. And then hopefully soon, before the summer, obviously the British summertime, I'll have I have another single out. So we got 25 Seconds to Landing is probably going to be our next single that's currently in the works. And I'd like to lay down another.
So the exclusive title there.
Yeah. And I'd like to lay down probably another instrumental, and so forth. So like literally that's where my kind of where my head's at with the whole thing now at the moment. So but yeah, it's still very exciting, and you know I've really enjoyed this kind of journey. You know, the whole synthwave journey that I've kind of gone on. It's certainly taken me in a new kind of direction with music, and provided me like with, you know, made me really, really excited to do other things and so forth. Like, you know, it's maybe in the past, like there's been a couple of things I kind of thought to myself, oh, do I really have to do this? Or, you know, do we have, like, do you reckon it's going to work out? Or is this asking a bit more of me than what, you know, I'm comfortable to give and so forth. So, yeah, it has not been like that since I first started this project. So it's just literally just keep going, keep creating, keep, you know, having as much fun as possible, and yeah, it's linking with more and more like-minded people.
No, that's the way to do it, mate. That sounds exciting. It sounds really good. I'm looking forward to another single as well. I think a single for summer will be amazing. And it's great to hear that you can be working with that singer as well, because his voice is fantastic. So for the audience listening, once again, I'm going to echo what I said at the beginning. I'll put the link to the track Glow in the episode notes. So please do go and support Lockdown FM and Brian on Bandcamp, Spotify, and go and support those releases and listen. So Brian, sort of moving on from what I've said there, where can our audience find you online, sort of social media, and where can they stream your music?
First, probably the most prominent music platform I use is Spotify, and social media of Lockdown FM on Facebook, Lockdown FM official on Instagram. I've got a TikTok page as well, which I've been plugging a little bit now. It's been quite good for the kind of promo and release and so forth. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, my YouTube channel as well is obviously Lockdown FM official. One word, and yeah, all the biggest social media platforms, you'll find me on those. So yeah, come drop me a DM wherever you're from. And yeah, I love that. I love, you know, getting messages from people to say, hey, great track. I'm from so and so. I am from US. I'm from Brazil or so forth. It's that international community, and the way the interconnection of people through what I believe to be is this online musical scene now is just incredible. So yeah, that's where you find me.
Fantastic. I'll once again, I mentioned it just now, I'll make sure all those links are put in the episode notes as well, so the audience can go in and then find you there and follow you. And please do get in contact with Brian as well, and just, if you've listened to Glow, feedback as well, because as artists it's always great to hear, you probably echo this, it's great to hear feedback on your music and what people think, and I find it quite interesting as well, like you said earlier, about whereby you look at your streams and whereby people are listening to your music and finding out the reach and how you are where you are. You're in London, I'm in the southwest of the UK, but yet your music is being heard worldwide, which is amazing. So Brian, thank you so much for spending the time with me this afternoon.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been great to chat about Lockdown FM and my pleasure, man, and chat about your music and see where you are and see how things are going to progress. And obviously we'll keep in contact, and I'll keep a lookout for that next release and help push that for you as well. But I'm sure the audience will get a lot listening to this episode, as I've learned a lot as well, and it's been fantastic. And once again, a big thank you for dropping by, and I'll speak to you soon, Brian.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. Thank you very much. And yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, buddy. Bye.
See you later.